All right, how's everybody doing out there? Welcome to my channel, and this is an educational channel where we look at various theories of everything in depth and things that are all-encompassing and that could benefit every aspect of your life if you, understood them, studied up on it, and today is video number 294 on the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. Mr. Larson was an engineer in the 20th century America, born in North Dakota, moved out to Oregon, and I think lived the rest of his life there. Died in 1990. He had his first epiphanies back in around 1930, but took him a long time to work everything out and kind of condense everything into his two fundamental postulates in the late 1950s. And then from those postulates, he went through a period of deduction to deduce an entire theoretical universe, from which he wrote books on physics and chemistry and astronomy, but also economics and metaphysics, philosophy, religion, and psychology, biology, and got a small following going who wrote books on other subjects as well. One of his followers was Dr. KVK Nehru. We're going to be looking at one of his articles that's coming up right here. But first, I'm just going to give you a very quick once-over on the reciprocal system because I think Nehru does the same. But basically, a lot of it is encompassed in the first fundamental postulate. This universe that we live in is not a universe of matter and is not a universe of energy. It is a universe made entirely and completely from motion. And for Larson, motion was the relationship between space and time. Space and time basically have no independent existence, but they come together in motion. And they are reciprocal aspects of motion. Motion is basically a fraction with time or space as the numerator and space or time as the denominator, with the caveats that space and time have their three-dimensional aspects. They also have their progressing aspects, meaning in time is always getting later and later and later. Space is always getting farther and farther and farther apart. And space and time are both quantized, meaning that they have a minimum unit. If you don't have a full unit of space or time, then you don't have space or time. And if you have 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time, you have the speed of light, which Larson refers to as unit speed. And this speed of light is really the null point or the background of the universe, the reference point, the origin, the 0 point. The speed of light outward in all directions, outward in space, outward in time, in all directions. And Larson refers to this as the progression of the natural reference system. And this contradicts sharply with Einstein's viewpoint and legacy science's viewpoint that the speed of light is the maximum speed of the universe. In Larson's system, the speed of light is the midpoint or the null point or the neutral point of the universe, and it's the point from which measurements are made. And it makes sense as a universe of motion. If you have a universe made out of motion, you have to be able to conceive of motion existing prior to anything else. So you have to be able to conceive of motion without anything that's actually moving. And that actually the thing that might be moving is motion itself, because matter is a form of motion as well. All of our different scientific quantities are fractions, with time or space as the numerator and space or time as the denominator. In this particular case of matter, matter is time to the third power over space to the third power, bringing in that first caveat from the first postulate that time and space both have their coordinate aspects there, come in 3 dimensions. Okay, now we're looking at KVK Nehru's article called The Space-Time Universe. And this article, I think, was written way back in the early 1980s. But it appeared in Reciprocity, which is a journal that was founded to carry on Larson's ideas in 1996. And part 1 goes like this. The last years of Einstein's were spent in pursuing his cherished dream of evolving a general theory of the universe. He never succeeded, nor anyone else did so far. The body of knowledge which we call physical science is at present only a loose collection of numerous different theories, each constructed to explain a particular domain of facts and not applicable to another set of facts. There has not been a general theory covering all physical phenomena, from the microscopic to the macroscopic. Indeed, the experts in the field, those who studied not only in depth but also in breadth, are beginning to realize that modern science reached the end of a blind alley. The proliferation of concepts like the neutron stars, the black holes, the gravitational waves, the vacuum interactions, and quarks. Dr. Phillips' ESP of quarks is not the final word on occult chemistry, and we must always have an open mind, are the results of frantic attempts to save the sinking boat of modern science. Unfortunately, it is not recognized that all of these are pure speculations and are never observed. The object of this article is to introduce to the general theory of the universe, introduce to the public the general theory of the universe, now available by the researchers of Dewey B. Larson and called the Reciprocal System of Theory, to outline its remarkable accomplishments and also to show how closely it resembles the occult view delineated in The Secret Doctrine from Blavatsky. Which can make sense, even if you don't like Blavatsky or think that she was a Satanist. The reciprocal system, just like the tree of life or really anything else, is just a technology, and it can be used for good or evil, depending on the intention of the user. Now, the reciprocal system, according to Dr. Bruce Perret, can only be used for good. You can't use it for evil. So, but Blavatsky, I've never read The Secret Doctrine, but, she didn't have a grasp of the reciprocal system. She had a grasp of some of the same concepts. So we'll see where Nehru goes with this, because I know there's a lot of Blavatsky haters out there, and I'm not trying to implicate Larson's work with what Blavatsky was, how he's trying to fit in the secret doctrine with the reciprocal system. And I'm quite sure that Mr. Larson didn't have any prior knowledge of the secret doctrine. I'm not quite sure, but I'm fairly sure. But first, it is necessary to take a look at the pandemonium in modern science and to realize that all is not well with it. And so this section is called Failures of Current Science. We will briefly trace some of the important shortcomings of the prevalent worldview of the modern science, which, of course, does not mean to deny the fact of its impressive achievements. The nuclear atom and the electronic structure of matter. From the fact that in certain atomic reactions like radioactivity, beta rays, electrons, were found among the products, it is concluded that electrons are constituents of atoms. But the equally probable alternative of the electrons coming into existence during the process is overlooked. For example, in atomic disintegration, photons are also found in the products. However, the previous logic is not applied here. The photons are not taken to be parts of the atoms in the matter in which the electrons are supposed to be. The postulated electron in the atom is then imputed with strange characteristics as compared to a free electron, such as the lack of definite location, jumping from one orbit to another without traversing the intervening space, etc. As the atom itself is found to be electrically neutral, the negative charge on the electron is assumed to be neutralized by an equal amount of positive charge in the nucleus. But in actuality, a negative and positive charge brought into mutual contact do not merely neutralize each other, they destroy each other, as is amply demonstrated by the same science in the annihilation reactions between matter and antimatter. Further, the assumed positive charges of the protons in the nucleus are confined to extremely small dimensions on the order of 10 to the minus 13 centimeters. Therefore, the force of repulsion among these positive charges is tremendously large due to the inverse square variation with distance, and the nucleus must come to pieces. To counteract this, therefore, it is assumed ad hoc that there is an attracting nuclear force to hold the nucleus together. Since there is absolutely no observation to support for the existence of the hypothetical nuclear force, it is further assumed that this force exists only in the nucleus. That is what Mr. Larson would call an ad hoc assumption. You just throw it in there. It explains only one thing. And, it is of no difference than so-called primitive people from prehistoric times attributing something to a demon or a spirit, using the strong nuclear force or the weak nuclear force to explain what's going on in the nucleus is no different. Another fly in the sore in the case of the neutron, which is also supposed to be a constituent part of the nucleus. It is a known fact that the free neutron is not a stable particle and spontaneously disintegrates with a half-life of about 13 minutes. However, since the atom itself is stable, the scientists are obliged to attribute strange characteristics to the neutron as part of the atom. It is assumed that the recalcitrant nature of the inert gases results from the occurrence of 8 electrons in the outer orbit, which is thought to be a stable configuration. In fact, the covalent bond, such as in copper chloride, is CuCl, is thought to be the result of the respective atoms assuming this supposedly stable configuration of 8 electrons in their outermost orbits. If this is true, it is not clear why, for example, an atom like that of chlorine, having 7 electrons in its outer orbit, does not convert to a stable structure and turn into inert chlorine by absorbing electron when placed in the environment of negative charges. The view that electric current consists of a flow of negative charges cannot be true, since the observed behavior of the flow of static negative charges is not the same as that of electric current. For example, the current-carrying conductor is electrostatically neutral, which is not true in the case of accumulated static electric charges. The property that distinguishes matter from antimatter is taken to be the charge conjugation. For example, the particle conjugated to the electron with its negative electric charge is positron, which is an electron with positive electric charge. On this basis, it is hard to see what are the conjugate antiparticles of electrically neutral particles, like neutrons. Indeed, it is contended that this particle itself is its conjugate. Then there is the proliferation of the elementary particles. Their number grew from the original 3 of electron, positron, and neutron to more than 100 now. It is evident that they can no more be treated as elementary. In addition, there is no explanation of the electric charge itself. It is simply taken to be one more of the given items of nature, as irreducible and as incomprehensible as gravity. We must realize that having lived with these irreducibles, the given items of physical knowledge, for generations has lulled us into the false belief that they do not require explanation, or that no explanation is ever possible. The final blow, however, is the concept of the fundamental role of matter. The final blow, however, to the concept of the fundamental role of matter comes from the interconvertibility of matter in radiation. E equals mc squared. There should, therefore, be an entity more fundamental to both, the common denominator, as it were. All right, this section is called Relativity, Gravitation, and the Microcosmos. The mathematics of the relativity theory, like the Lorentz transformations, the Riemannian geometry, etc., far antedate the relativity theory. While its mathematics prove to be correct, the relativity theory is not internally consistent in its conceptual foundations. One of these logical inconsistencies is the clock paradox. According to relativity, a moving clock runs slow. But since, again according to relativity, motion is relative, if you consider the case of 2 clocks in relative motion, each clock runs slower than the other. This paradox has never been resolved, except by resorting to arguments which automatically confute Einstein's views. And, I've even heard people using that clock paradox as like a celebration of Einstein's theory, where, if you have a paradox, it means that the theory is not correct. And especially when you have a theory that states that the clock is moving faster than the other clock, and that the other clock is moving faster than the first clock. Those two things are contradictory, and it should be a pretty good indication that your theory is not correct. Okay, Einstein's dictum that c, the velocity of light, is the highest speed that is possible in the universe has no real observational support. It may be recalled that the experimental situation which led him to reach this conclusion is the observed decrease in the acceleration of electrically accelerated charged particles at high speeds. Since from Newton's law, force equals mass times acceleration, Einstein concluded that for this to happen, the mass must increase with velocity. His formula predicts, in fact, that the mass increases and approaches infinity as its speed approaches the speed of light. But the theory is silent as to any increase in the gravitation pertinent to this increasing mass. Obviously, Einstein overlooked other alternatives, equally valid mathematically, which explain the decrease in acceleration with increase in speed. One alternative, for example, is that the effect of the apparently constant electric charge that is forcing the acceleration may decrease with speed. The equation force equals mass times acceleration still holds good. If this is true, as Larson points out, there will never be infinite mass, and consequently there will not be any upper limit to the speed attainable to the mass. The speed, then, is limited only by the capabilities of the process. Indeed, there is visible evidence, like the quasar redshifts, that point to these ultra-limit speeds, but unfortunately, the evidence is being misrepresented because of the unquestioned servitude to Einstein's authority. This sounds familiar to stuff that's going on in the medical industry right now. Einstein's concepts in the general relativity, too, are equally questionable. Larson points out gravitational energy is purely an energy of position, but energy of position in space cannot be propagated in space. Thus, gravitation can never be propagated. In fact, astronomers disregard Einstein here and make their calculations as though gravitational action is instantaneous in order to arrive at the correct results. In short, one finds that there has been no understanding of many important cosmological phenomena like gravity or its relation to nuclear and electromagnetic forces, quasars, pulsars, origin of cosmic waves, the 2.7 K Kelvin, background radiation, the constants of nature, etc., except with the use of ad hoc hypotheses. That there has not been a general theory hitherto explaining all the realms of the physical universe is no surprise, since the individual theories of modern science, each applicable to only a limited range of physical phenomena, themselves are either unsound or not self-consistent, or are replete with hypotheses bolstered up for the occasion. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there and take over tomorrow with part 2 of this article called The Space-Time Universe from Dr. KVK Nehru. All right, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.